Today's lesson is called The Energy of the Future. Hi everyone, my name is Jeff.
My name is Roger. An interesting title for today's lesson. It's actually a question. The energy of the future would be a proper title if we're going to talk about some kind of energy that we are going to use in the future. But we're talking about a kind of energy that we might use in the future, but we're not quite sure. So that's why our title is in the form of a question. Is this the energy of the future? We really don't know yet.
There you go, the energy of the future. See how I modulated my voice there at the end? This is definitely a question, okay? The debate is still raging. What will be the energy of the future? I think that the whole burning fossil fuels thing, that's going to slowly start to peter out. We're going to stop burning petroleum and coal and stuff like that. But what is going to go ahead and fill this hole that is left, okay, as far as energy is concerned, if we're not burning oil, not burning fossil fuels and stuff like that, coal, so on and so forth, what are we going to burn for energy? That is the question of today. We're going to be talking about the energy of the future. What will it be? All right, folks, with that, it's time for us to take a break, but don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
The energy of the future? In order to fight climate change, some countries are moving away from burning fossil fuels, such as coal and oil, for power, and switching to clean energy. Which of these energy sources is best, however, is still very much a matter of debate.
All right, let's try to answer this question. What is going to be the energy of the future? Is it the one that we're going to talk about? Well, we will see. We'll just have to wait and see. Here in the first part of our lesson, it says, in order to fight climate change, some countries are moving away from burning fossil fuels, such as coal and oil, for power and switching to clean energy. So yeah, in order to do this so that we might do this, we want to fight climate change, and in order to do that, some countries are using fewer and fewer fossil fuels, okay? And if you talk about fossil fuels, these are fuels that come from fossils, which are things that are buried underground and they've been down there for millions of years, and in a lot of cases they have turned to stone. So yeah, fossil fuels would include coal, that black dark stuff that comes from mines. I think there used to be coal mines out near Shifenliao and places like that. And oil, of course, refers to petroleum, which comes from various countries in the world, particularly the Middle East. But some countries are using those fuels less and less, okay? They are moving away from fossil fuels. If you're moving away from something, in this particular case, it means you're using it less and less.
So there you go. Once upon a time, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. Fossil fuels were king. People burned fossil fuels for their energy needs. Fill up your gas tank with gasoline. Burn that gasoline to get around. Maybe you've got a coal power plant. You burn the coal in that power plant to go ahead and form electricity, or to produce electricity, I should say. But that's no longer the case. We need to get rid of coal and oil and fossil fuels, and we need to switch to clean energy. Which of these energy sources is best, however, is still very much a matter of debate. Nothing has been decided at this particular point. Sure, we know we're going to move away from burning fossil fuels, but what is going to fill in the gap there, okay? We still need energy. What is going to do it for us? How are we going to produce energy in a clean way moving forward? Anyways, the debate rages on, and we'll get into it right after we take a short break.
Certainly the most controversial of these options is nuclear power. Supporters stress that nuclear power is not only low carbon, as it doesn't produce any harmful greenhouse gases, but it's also cheap to produce. Besides being low in cost, nuclear power may be considered a reliable source of energy too, as it can run without any interruptions for more than a year.
大家好，第二部分我们看到单字 controversial 这个字是形容词，指引起争议的。例如 The controversial poster was soon removed 那张引起争议的海报很快就被拿下来了。或是 The celebrity's controversial statements about immigration caused him to lose many of his fans 那位名人关于移民的争议性言论让他流失许多粉丝。再来我们看到名词 option 指选择，可选择的事物。例如 This restaurant has quite a few vegetarian options on its menu 这间餐厅的菜单上有许多素食的选项。另外补充几个相关片语。第一 Leave somebody with no choice or option but to 加动词，表示让某人除了点点点之外别无选择。我们可以说 After losing his job, the man was left with no option but to get unemployment payments from the government 那名男子失去工作后，他除了向政府领取失业救济金外别无选择。第二，在 options 前加上 numerous or many 其中 options 可用 choices 替换，表示有很多选择。举例来说 This school offers numerous options for students interested in taking art classes 这所学校为选修艺术课程有兴趣的学生提供很多选择。第三 can be a better choice or option for 点点点表示会是点点点比较好的选择。像是 Hamsters don't require as much attention as other pets do, so they can be a better option for people who lead busy lives. 仓鼠不像其他宠物需要那么多照顾，所以它们会是生活忙碌的人更好的选择。接下来我们看到单字 supporter 这个字是名词，指支持者、拥护者。举例来说 Most of the politicians' supporters are under 35 years old. 这名政客的多数支持者年龄小于35岁。再来我们看到名词 interruption 指打断、干扰。举例来说 Let Penny work without interruption for a few hours and then go talk to her. 让 Penny 不受干扰工作几个小时后再去跟她讲话。或是 Sarah had too many interruptions last night to finish watching the movie. Sarah 昨晚受到太多打扰而无法看完那部电影。
Okay, let's continue to talk about the possible fuels of the future. Certainly the most controversial of these options is nuclear power. And, of course, the good people of Taiwan here know this very well. The fourth nuclear power plant that was supposed to be operational a number of years ago, that hasn't happened because it's very controversial. Some people support it. A lot of people are against it. So, of course, nuclear power is very controversial. And if something is controversial, a lot of people disagree about this particular thing. Here in Taiwan, the subject of relations with China is very controversial. Should we keep them away or should we talk to them? Okay, that's controversial. I can't talk about it too much here without people getting angry. In the United States, we've got lots of controversial things as well, like abortion and gun control. Those are very controversial topics.
Anyways, nuclear power. Here's the thing about nuclear power. When it's going good, or when things are going good, so to speak, nuclear power is great. But when things go wrong, oh man, can they ever go terribly, terribly wrong. And we'll talk about that some in the future, or in the next paragraph, I should say. Specifically, we'll talk about some nuclear disasters. But let's say things are going well, going good. Nuclear can be a great option. I believe France as a country relies heavily on nuclear power, and they've had no problems with that for the most part. And it's very clean. You don't emit any smoke or anything like that. You release no CO2, no greenhouse gases when you are running a nuclear power plant. Anyways, we've already talked about the word controversial. Let's move on to the word option. An option is a choice, something that you can choose from. So we're going to be talking about sources of energy besides fossil fuels, and we'll go down the list one option at a time. Now, also nuclear power. When you make nuclear power, you're actually just making regular electricity by heating water, and the water turns to steam and it spins a machine or an engine, and that makes electricity. But how do you create the heat? You create the heat by splitting atoms. Yeah, the center of an atom is called the nucleus, and if you split a certain atom, it releases energy. So when you split a nucleus, you create nuclear power.
And you usually use uranium to do that. But of course, after you do that, you've got the problem of nuclear waste, which we'll get to in just a couple of seconds. But supporters stress that nuclear power is not only low carbon, as it doesn't produce any harmful greenhouse gases, but it's also cheap to produce. Indeed, you can import uranium from other countries cheaply, like from Canada. I believe they are a pretty big supplier of uranium for nuclear power plants. And yeah, nuclear power is great because, well, it doesn't produce a lot of smoke, okay? You don't have these big smokestacks outside of a nuclear power plant. You've got cooling towers, but that's just steam coming out of those. But you don't get that nasty smoke, and of course, smoke has a lot of carbon. So if something's low carbon, it does not produce a lot of carbon, or at least in this case, carbon dioxide or other nasty greenhouse gases.
And that's what supporters say about nuclear power. By the way, if you're a supporter here, that means you like something and you say so. You're willing to give it your support. You're a fan of that thing. You like that thing. So supporters of nuclear energy stress or say very solemnly so that you understand it and hear it that nuclear power is not only low carbon, as it doesn't produce any harmful greenhouse gases, but it's also cheap to produce. So there you go. No greenhouse gases, and it's also cheap. How about that? Now, besides being low in cost, though, nuclear power may be considered a reliable source of energy, too, as it can run without any interruptions for more than a year. Now, I hear that nuclear subs and big battleships and aircraft carriers, they also often run on nuclear power for this particular reason. Have you ever seen an aircraft carrier have to fuel up? No. You could never fill one of those huge ships with enough diesel fuel or gasoline to make it go around the world. But if you do put a nuclear power plant in one of those ships, it can run and run and run and never have to stop.
Yep, it can last a very long time. It can run without any interruptions. And an interruption, this is the noun form here, that just means something that stops you from doing what you were doing, okay? If you're trying to study in the library and some guy is sitting nearby and he smells really horribly and he's making all sorts of noise, well, that would be an interruption. You might talk to the librarian and say, "Get that bum out of here. He's interrupting my studies." So yeah, these types of energy, or this particular type of energy, can run for a long time without any interruptions. There'll be nothing to disturb it. You could use it for maybe 1 or 2 years without having to refuel the nuclear reactor.
Amazing, right? Well, not quite. Remember, when things are going good, nuclear is great. But when things go bad, boy, do they ever go bad. And we'll talk about that right after a short break.
Those against nuclear power, however, oppose it with just one word: Fukushima. For them, the potential for a nuclear disaster like the one that happened in Fukushima in 2011 or the one in Chernobyl in 1986, both of which devastated the local environment and people, makes the nuclear option a no. And while nuclear power may not create any carbon waste, it certainly isn't waste-free. Nuclear waste takes years to become harmless and is tricky to get rid of safely, not to mention the dangerous leaks that can result from its careless disposal.
第三部分我们看到单字 devastate， 这个字是动词，指摧毁、毁灭。举例来说 The country was devastated by the terrible earthquake. 那个国家遭受可怕的地震侵袭。或是 News of his favorite team's loss devastated James. James 喜欢的那一队输球，消息传来让他大受打击。最后我们看到名词 disposal， 指废弃物的处理、丢弃。举例来说 Improper disposal of drugs and chemicals can damage the environment. 不当丢弃药品和化学制品会破坏环境。另外补充一个相关片语 at one's disposal， 表示任由某人处置、支配。例如 The wealthy man had 5 servants at his disposal inside his mansion. 这名富豪在他的大宅里有5个佣人供他使唤。
Okay, now we talked about the supporters of nuclear power. They say it's low carbon and it's low in greenhouse gases and you can use it for a very long time. But there are people who are against nuclear power. These are people who oppose nuclear power. They probably go to protests and carry signs that say, no nukes. But yeah, those against nuclear power, however, oppose it with just one word, Fukushima. Ooh, if you say that word, people are going to go, you're right, nuclear power can go wrong. So yeah, if you oppose something, you're against it. You could oppose abortion in the United States or oppose gun control.
Yeah, when people built the Fukushima power plant, they did a great job. They said, you know what? The chances of anything going wrong, that's a long shot, okay? It's like 0.001% of the time something bad will happen. And you know what? That's just out of the realm of possibility. This is a totally safe power plant. Well, that once in a blue moon thing kind of happened in Fukushima, and they had quite the meltdown, quite the nuclear disaster. And people, a lot of people still remember this. So those against nuclear power, they only have to say one word because the memory of Fukushima, well, it's still fresh in the memory of many of us.
Exactly. And of course, Fukushima was when that earthquake occurred in Japan back in 2011. And there was a big tidal wave and stuff like that. And the tidal wave damaged that nuclear power plant. And for them, the potential for a nuclear disaster like the one that happened there in 2011, or the one in Chernobyl in 1986, or maybe 3 Mile Island back in 1979. But here we're talking about two disasters, so both of these disasters devastated the local environment and people. Okay, so again, we're talking about the potential, the likelihood of something happening in the future. That's what potential is. If your child seems to be good at playing the piano at the age of 3 or something, you could say, oh, he has a potential, or he has the potential of being a professional musician when he grows up.
There you go. So all you have to say, Fukushima, and people are saying, no way, we're not going to do that again. So let's be against nuclear power, or stand against it, I should say. You could either say Fukushima or Chernobyl, because both of these were terrible disasters which devastated, really totally wreaked havoc, or totally ruined or destroyed the local environment and people. So let's not do that again. Let's not live through that devastation once again. By the way, devastation would be the noun, devastate would be the verb, to totally ruin something. Now, there's more, and while nuclear power may not create any carbon waste, it certainly isn't waste-free. I hear that these power plants don't create a whole lot of waste, but the waste that they do create is pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah, they don't use all the uranium there. It turns into material that they cannot use, and it's got to sit there for thousands of years, okay? They've got a half-life of, 90,000 years or something like that. So, yeah, that nuclear waste is going to be sitting there for a long time, and if it gets into the environment and down into the water supply, ooh, you've got a pretty nasty situation on your hands. So, yeah, here it says nuclear waste takes years to become harmless and is tricky to get rid of safely, not to mention the dangerous leaks that can result from its careless disposal. So, yeah, imagine somebody 20,000 years from now coming across nuclear waste and wondering what the heck it is and what to do with it. So, yeah, it is kind of tricky. It's kind of difficult to get rid of this nuclear waste. And not to mention, or 更不要说, not to mention the dangerous leaks that can result if there is some careless disposal. And disposal refers to when you get rid of something, like the disposal of garbage.
Yes, if you don't throw it away properly, maybe that nuclear waste finds its way into a water supply for a city or something like that. And that won't be good for anyone. Anyways, folks, with that, it's time for us to take a break. But don't worry, don't fret. The Chinese teacher is waiting in the wings.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第2部分提到核能支持者的看法。那有一个句子写到说 Besides being low in cost, Nuclear power may be considered a reliable source of energy too. 好，那这边有2个文法重点。第一个是要介绍 besides 的不同词性跟用法。好，那它第一个用法就是当介系词，后面要接名词或动名词，去表达除了什么什么之外还怎么样。意思呢，就相当于 in addition to。像课文句子就是这个用法，它用 besides being low in cost 来表达除了成本低之外还怎么样怎么样。那我们来造个例句 Kate can speak other languages besides English. 除了英语 Kate 还会说其他语言。好，第二个用法是拿 besides 来当副词，那常常会摆在句首来修饰整个句子，去表达说除此之外或是而且。例如 The show was fantastic.Besides, the tickets didn't cost much. 那场表演很精彩，而且门票也不贵。好，再来看第二个文法重点是我们的动词 consider 在这边表达认为。那我们要表达说认为某人或某事物怎么样怎么样，主动用法是 consider 某人或某事物To be 再加名词或形容词，那么 to be 可以省略，而被动用法是某人或某事物 be considered to be 再加名词或形容词，其中的 to be 也可以省略不用。我们就来造2个例句 They consider him to be a liar 也可以说 They consider him a liar 他们认为他是个骗子。 The criminal is considered to be dangerous也可以说 The criminal is considered dangerous 那名罪犯被认为是危险的。好，再来读到课文最后一句，他写道 Nuclear waste takes years to become harmless and is tricky to get rid of safely. 核废料要花好几年的时间才会变得无害，而且要安全清除是很棘手的。我们句子里面用到片语 get rid of。我们先来看这个动词 rid, R-I-D， 它是指说使摆脱、使免除，它的三态同形。那么片语动词 get rid of 当中的 rid， 它是过去分词哦。Get rid of 后面可以接人或事物，那去表达说除掉、清除、处理掉不想要的东西，或者是摆脱掉某人，把某人打发走。我们同样造2个例句 His mother told him to get rid of his old sneakers. 他妈妈叫他把那双旧的运动鞋给丢掉，把它处理掉。Jessie finally had the courage to get rid of her selfish boyfriend. Jessie 她终于提起勇气来摆脱她那个自私的男友了。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Nuclear.There are doubts about whether the nuclear plant is safe. Supporter. Many of the candidate's supporters came out in the cold to watch her give a speech. Carbon. Carbon in the form of coal is a fuel that can generate energy. Interruption. My brother tried working from home for a week, but the interruptions prevented him from getting anything done. Oppose. Many people oppose the government's plan to build a new highway through the countryside.Potential. Technology is a double-edged sword. It has the potential to help and to harm.
Okay, everyone. With that, today's article is now complete. But, as always, we sure hope that you guys have enjoyed reading along with us. Anyways, I'm Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.